think of what a hero is, what qualities come to mind? Well, heroes need to be ready to fight against impossible odds. They should want to stand up for others, and they must be willing to make great personal sacrifices for a cause. When Russ McClean got his start in the personnel department at GM, no one could have guessed that someday he would become one of Corvette's champions and our third inductee into the 2015 Corvette Hall of Fame.
I first met Russ in the late 1980s. However, his reputation had preceded him. Russ had a storied career in both personnel and manufacturing operations in the U.S. and Europe, which is where I learned of his successes at that time. In the late 80s, I was the personnel director at the Linden, New Jersey assembly plant, when Russ was the plant manager at the Ramos Arizpe assembly plant in Mexico. Russ took that plant to the #1 quality assembly plant in all of General Motors. It was the envy of every other assembly plant and certainly the benchmark for quality.
Corvette was in trouble and losing money on every car sold. Joe Spielman would make a very important phone call to the one person who could drive the Corvette program out of the red and into the black.
I had to put together a team, a crack team that could concentrate every day on, first of all, fixing the financials around the C4 and then engineer the new C5. I brought in Dave Hill as an engineer, a great engineer. I put Will Cooksey down here in the Bowling Green assembly plant because he had a tremendous way of working with people. But I needed somebody to be the kingpin, the one that was a program manager that could drive everybody, design, engineering, plant, all together as one team. I knew Russ McClean from Ramos Arizpe days, and he was the focused guy I thought I needed. I brought Russ in, and he did exactly that. Russ himself is the stereotypical Scotsman. He can squeeze $3 out of a nickel.
He knew that he was stepping into a really, really desperate situation. And he knew also that the C5, which was supposed to be in process, and it was to some degree, might not be a reality simply because there was no budget, there was no engineering, and you had an element of the corporation that wanted to kill it, which I know very well. And Russ, against all those odds, took the job to come in, and we were losing about $1,000 a car on the C4 Corvettes, on every car built. Within a year, he turned that around. And in 2 years, we were making money on the C4. And it was, I'd say, looking back at his history, it's because the guy absolutely knew how to basically get the squeal out of the pig.
He could really bring teams together under high pressure situations. And he really was the guy that aligned design, engineering, and manufacturing into one cohesive team.
Russ set about attacking quality and reliability issues and trying really hard to improve business results. He was a hard taskmaster, but the team needed one at the time. I remember that when he met with somebody who didn't quite live up to his hopes, he would say things like, "You mean you didn't do it? Now, is that because you didn't want to or because you didn't know how?" And I always tried to conduct myself in a way that I didn't have to answer those questions.
The other thing Russ did, which I found to be fascinating, and I was involved, was in fact, he said all the key players on the Corvette program, this was a 5th generation car, I want you to spend a day at the factory. Now think about this for a minute. An engineer who's designing a particular part of the car had to go to the factory and work a day on that part of the car. Now granted, they're working on the 4th generation car, but you still get the flavor of, if I'm working with powertrain, how does it impact the plant, how does the plant install it, and all that type of thing. So I duly spent my day at the plant. It was intimidating, but a rewarding event. To sit there and work with the workers and talk to them about the car and then the passion they had about the car and the problems they saw with the car. I mean, they worked with it every day, so they knew exactly where the problems were.
Still, support for the car was ebbing in upper management at a time when the Corvette needed the resources for a complete reinvention. Everything would soon go from bad to worse.
Unfortunately, Joe was moved, and the new boss came in the first meeting I had with him. He told me that the Corvette or race cars have no place in General Motors. and that he would be spending all of his time trying to save the high-volume vehicles, and I should only see him if I'm in trouble. Well, that was great for me. However, the next meeting I had with him, he told me that he had gotten the board to approve removing Corvette as a core business, and that my job was to let the Corvette die.
Russ, in fact, couldn't let that happen for several reasons, one of which is his dedication to the program itself and the people on that product program, which he felt a tremendous obligation to, as well as his understanding of the Corvette's role, not only for Chevrolet, but for General Motors as a leader in the industry.
Together with a band of rebels that included Joe Spielman, Jim Perkins, John Cafaro, and others, they continue to advance the cause under the radar at great risk to themselves. In the end, their efforts took Corvette from some of its darkest days into a bright future.
And then with almost no money, very few funds except what I could dig out of some other car programs or what Jim Perkins could give us, Russ managed to lead the team to do the development work for the C5.
When Dave Hill came on board, we decided that we wanted a C5 vehicle that had the hydroform rails as well as a concept of the powertrain, and we needed to have a vehicle that we could drive and test. So we went to Jim Perkins, who pulled us out of the fire many times and saved the program.
I remember when he first came to my office and we were looking for money and some other, not only money, but some talent to do the Chevrolet Engineering Research vehicle, which was the Serve. And that was going to be the demonstration car for the C5. And I thought, man, the amount of money you're asking for is not going to come close, and I've got to find a way to get that money if we're going to do it, because it wasn't going to come from anywhere else. Magically, I put it this way, went outside to an outside organization who built the car and built it for just about on target for what he said you could build it for.
After we completed this car, we were really well satisfied with how good it was. Russ and Joe Spielman individually gathered members of the North American Strategy Board, that was the people who reported to the CEO, to come and drive the car and experience this accomplishment. Now, that was a pretty bold move, pretty daring move to have people at that level come out to engineering and drive a mule vehicle. But it was challenging times, and we had to take bold action, and it turned out to be a great result.
And they were so impressed that it went a long way in getting approval to fund the C5 program.
The car was done. Nobody could stop it at that point. And at that point in time, Russ got called in by his boss and told that he would disobey orders and he would never get another job of that magnitude or never get another promotion. It didn't matter. The vindication for Russ McClean and the work that he did leading that team is the world acclaim of the C5 of one of the finest cars ever to hit the road. And it set the architecture, the basic architecture, for the C6 and the C7 to follow.
However he did it, he was very instrumental, along with Jim Perkins and Joe Spielman and a few other people, of making sure we have a Corvette and still have the Corvette.
I can tell you right now, there'd be no Corvettes today if it wasn't for Russ and his leadership. I think Dave Hill and I would still be kind of scrambling around trying to get our acts together, and he brought us together, made us a close team, and I think he really made us friends for life.
You know, I get a lot of credit for saving the Corvette, but he's just as instrumental as myself or Joe Spielman or anybody else.
For being one of those at General Motors who saved the Chevrolet Corvette for us all, our final inductee into the class of 2015 Corvette Hall of Fame, Mr. Russ McClean.